Before Red Bull was Red Bull, it was Jaguar. They ran in Formula 1 from 2000 to 2004, with notable drivers including Eddie Irvine, Pedro de la Rosa and Mark Webber. They now compete in Formula E as Jaguar TCS Racing and actually won the team championship in the 2023 and 2024 season. But could they return to Formula 1 and replicate that success? Now to answer this, I loaded up F125 MyTeam, created the Jaguar F1 team with this incredible mod, signed both Valtteri Bottas and Callum Voisin before simulating the next 10 seasons of Formula 1. Now before we begin, make sure you drop a like on the video if you do enjoy, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. At the end of the first season, Red Bull returned to glory in the Constructors' Championship as they beat Ferrari and the former champions of McLaren. The newest Jaguar team had a pretty strong debut season, finishing in P8, ahead of Audi, Alpine and the Racing Bulls. Both drivers finished with each other in the standings as Bottas took his car to P15 and Voisin finished just behind in P16. The top three of the driver standings replicate the Constructors, after third place McLaren had their driver Lando Norris also finish in P3. Runners-up Ferrari also had their driver as the runner-up as Charles Leclerc took P2, finishing 100 points behind the champion. Now returning to championship glory was Max Verstappen, who completely dominated the sport to take his 5th world title. He managed an incredible 10 race wins across a 16 race season with that 100-point gap, with Leclerc winning just twice, just like Oscar Piastri, but he finished down in P5. Their teammates of Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris ended the season with just 1 race win each. But a huge driver transfer market will occur at the end of this season, with Max Verstappen and Fernando Alonso retiring, while Oscar Piastri, Carlos Sainz and Callum Voisin are all dropped by their teams with no other teams picking them up. Both Racing Bulls drivers will move teams, with Liam Lawson joining McLaren and Arvid Lindblad filling the seat at Williams. Pierre Gasly is set to move over to Aston Martin, with Lewis Hamilton set to join Alpine, while Esteban Ocon replaces him at Ferrari. The open seat at Jaguar is then given to Gabriel Bortoleto, with the open seat at Audi providing a debut for Victor Martins. Sergio Perez will come in to return at Red Bull, Zachary Sullivan will come in at Haas, and the newest Racing Bulls lineup will consist of Pepe Marti alongside Paul Aron. The first set of regulation changes will only affect the aerodynamics department. After those major transfers, Red Bull were knocked off the top spot by Ferrari, who win their first Constructors' Championship in almost 20 years. Jaguar made use of their new signing to move up to P7, scoring a strong 92 points, which saw Valtteri Bottas enter the top 10, while Bortoleto's first season with the team saw him finish in P13. Now with Max Verstappen retiring, the top 3 saw a small shake-up, as George Russell took his Mercedes up to the 3rd place spot. Lando Norris was also able to move up to P2, but still finished around 50 points behind Charles Leclerc, who topped the standings for his first ever World Drivers' Championship. He wasn't quite as dominant as Verstappen was last season, as he only took 8 race wins, with Norris improving to take 5. George Russell managed to win his first race of the simulation, with both Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez managing victories with their new teams. Oscar Piastri is able to return to Formula 1 to drive for Mercedes next season, after he takes Kimi Antonelli's seat. Lewis Hamilton will eventually retire from Formula 1 after a very disappointing season with Alpine, with his expected successor Oliver Behrman taking his seat, but just not at Ferrari. Paul Aron is then dropped by the Racing Bulls after just a single season, as Arvid Lindblad returns, and Gabriel Bortoleto jumps ship to Williams. Haas will provide a debut for Zane Maloney, while Mattia Zagazzetta comes in at Jaguar as a last-minute signing. The powertrain department is then the sole receiver of regulation changes at the end of the second season. Ferrari were strong enough to retain their championship title and win back-to-back Constructors' Championships, finishing just 2 points ahead of the McLaren team. The new Jaguar team had a much stronger season after they moved up to P5 and scoring over 240 points. Mattia Zagazzetta came in with a surprisingly strong P10 finish, while Valtteri Bottas finished all the way up in P4, just 7 points behind the top 3. Third place comes as a surprise appearance from Pierre Gasly, who had an incredible season at Aston Martin to finish just 2 points behind the former champion. Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc was unsuccessful in retaining his Drivers' Championship, falling to that runner-up spot, as McLaren driver Lando Norris rose to the top of the standings to win the Formula 1 World Drivers' Championship. The top 2 would then be tied on 4 race wins each, just like Jaguar driver Valtteri Bottas, who recorded the newest team's first Formula 1 wins. Pierre Gasly took another 2 race wins, while both George Russell and Isaac Hadjar took a single race win each. Despite his somewhat decent performance, Jaguar decided against keeping Zagazzetta, instead bringing in the more experienced Nico Hülkenberg. Lance Stroll is also dropped by his team, as Oscar Piastri joins Aston Martin and race winner Valtteri Bottas moves back to Mercedes. This leaves the last open seats at Audi and Jaguar, with Paul Aron and Carlos Sainz returning to the sport to drive for their respective teams. Both the aerodynamics and chassis departments are then hit with the latest regulation changes. The top of the Constructors' Championship remained pretty similar, with Ferrari leading the way ahead of McLaren and Mercedes as Red Bull dropped down to P6. Jaguar took advantage of that to move up to P4, with both new drivers finishing inside the top 8. Nico Hülkenberg would finish in that P8 spot, while Carlos Sainz's return season saw him finish in P6. Last season's third place Pierre Gasly dropped all the way down to P12 this year, with the third place spot once again going to George Russell. The top 2 would remain the same, however they would swap places, with Lando Norris dropping to P2. This meant that the Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc returned to the top of the standings to win his second world title of the simulation. He would be the strongest driver this season as well, as 7 race wins earned him a gap of almost 100 points to Lando Norris, who only managed to win 4. Nico Hülkenberg was actually able to win his first ever Formula 1 races at his new team, with Isaac Hadjar, Carlos Sainz and Liam Lawson all winning a single race each. Now there'll only be a small set of driver moves happening at the end of the season, with both Valtteri Bottas and Pierre Gasly losing their seats after lackluster seasons. Oliver Behrman will join the Mercedes team, while Zach O'Sullivan moves over to Aston Martin. Debuts will then be given to both Nicolas Solov and Jack Crawford at both Alpine and Haas. The regulation changes will then only hit the durability department as we reach the halfway mark. And what seems to be somewhat out of nowhere, brand new Constructors Champions have been crowned, in the form of the newest Jaguar team. Now they dethroned Ferrari, who were also overtaken by Mercedes as they dropped to 3rd place. Nico Hülkenberg achieved a career best finish in P4, just 20 points behind the champion Charles Leclerc, who dropped down to 3rd place. Lando Norris fell all the way down to P6, with George Russell successfully moving up to P2. And for the first time since 2006, a Spanish driver is the Formula 1 world champion, as the smooth operator Carlos Sainz took his Jaguar to the very top of the sport. Now he finished just a single point ahead of George Russell, who himself only finished 2 points ahead of Charles Leclerc, with a title fight going all the way down to the final race in Abu Dhabi. Across the entire season, Carlos Sainz took 4 race wins, just like Charles Leclerc, with George Russell managing to stay near the top after only winning twice. The other Jaguar driver Nico Hülkenberg secured another 3 race wins, with Norris winning twice and Oscar Piastri winning just once. Hülkenberg was very happy with his performance and has decided it's time for him to retire, with Jaguar having to bring in Rafael Villagomez after missing the transfer deadline. Some possibly big regulation changes could make up for the minimal transfers, with the aerodynamics, chassis and durability departments all being hit. After losing Hülkenberg and failing to adapt, Jaguar fell all the way from winning the title down to P7, with Mercedes winning their first Constructors' Championship of the simulation. Villagomez's debut season saw him finish down in P14, with the reigning champion of Carlos Sainz only managing to finish in P11. Making the most of the change was Sergio Perez, who managed to take his Red Bull up to a 3rd place finish, unlike George Russell, who couldn't capitalise and remained as the runner-up. But Charles Leclerc could, as he took a page from Carlos Sainz's book to win the title by just 2 championship points. Leclerc took another 5 race wins this season, with both Russell and Perez finishing the season with 4 wins each. Oliver Behrman would win his first F1 races, just like Zane Maloney, who was able to take his Haas to success in Las Vegas. Now despite finishing inside the top 3, Sergio Perez was dropped from Red Bull, and replaced by the new race winner Oliver Behrman, allowing Kimi Antonelli to make his return after leaving in Season 2. Jaguar will also bring in a new driver, with a former champion Lando Norris coming in to replace Villagomez. McLaren will go on to sign Zach O'Sullivan, with Aston Martin bringing Nicolas Solov to their team. Alpine will then sign the former Alpine Junior Victor Martins, with Richard Verschoor coming in for a very late debut with Audi. With the aerodynamics and chassis departments will then be faced with regulation changes for a 2nd season in a row. For a 2nd season in a row as well, Mercedes were able to top the constructor standings, scoring over 200 points more than Ferrari. Jaguar couldn't make up much ground as they once again finished in P7, but scoring just under double what they scored in the previous year. Carlos Sainz dropped even further down the standings after he finished in P15, with Lando Norris performing somewhat better to finish in P10. George Russell would once again miss out on the title after he was dropped down to 3rd place, with Charles Leclerc also dropping down to the runner-up spot. Now if you've seen enough of my videos, I'm sure you can already guess who took the title this year, as the returning Mercedes driver of Kimi Antonelli dominated the sport for his first World Championship. His 8 race wins took him over 80 points clear of Leclerc, with the Monegasque driver only winning 5. George Russell, Oscar Piastri and Oliver Behrman all managed a single race win each across this season. Now it was only a matter of time before Carlos Sainz was dropped by Jaguar, but it does happen at the end of Season 7, with George Russell being signed as his replacement. The Constructors' Champions will reunite Kimi Antonelli and Oliver Behrman, with Gabriel Bortoleto securing a move over to Red Bull. Jack Crawford will make a move over to Williams, with Tim Tramnitz being set to make his debut with Haas next year. Taylor Barnard will also be set to make his debut as he replaces Franco Colapinto at Alpine, as Esteban Ocon is made a free agent. The newest race winner Zane Maloney gets promoted to Ferrari, with Liam Lawson joining Haas and Oscar Piastri returning to his home team of McLaren. The final open seat is in at Aston Martin, who bring Valtteri Bottas back to the sport for one last run. The chassis and powertrain departments are then hit with regulation changes as we head towards the back end of the simulation. After a couple seasons away, Jaguar have managed to return to the top of the standings to win their second Constructors' Championship of the simulation, overtaking Mercedes, who finished just 50 points behind. Lando Norris did make some major improvements to move up to P5, however he would be beaten by his new teammate George Russell, who remained in the top 3. Charles Leclerc dropped to P4, also being overtaken by Oscar Piastri, who returned to McLaren with a P2 finish. The reigning champion Kimi Antonelli was able to retain his title to win back-to-back championships, however the point deficit to the runner-up was reduced to 50 points. He was only able to win 5 races this season, with Oscar Piastri returning to win a total of 3 times. Charles Leclerc also won another 3 races, with both George Russell and Zayn Maloney winning twice, while Lando Norris won his first race with Jaguar. Aston Martin driver Nicolas Olof has been hovering around that P13, P14 spot, but will lose his seat at the end of the season, with Pepe Marti being brought in as his replacement. Taylor Barnard will join the Racing Bulls, allowing Matteo Zagazzetta to once again return to Formula 1 and drive for Alpine. Unfortunately, Jaguar will lose George Russell after just a single season as he returns to Mercedes, replacing Oliver Behrman, who returns to Red Bull, as Gabriel Bortoleto also makes a return to the Constructors' Champions of Jaguar. The chassis department will then be the sole target of regulation changes as we head into the penultimate season. At the end of Season 9, Jaguar managed to stay at the very top, but finished just 10 points ahead of Mercedes, so that final season could be very interesting. Mercedes driver George Russell was down in P5, with the lowest Jaguar driver being Lando Norris, who finished inside the top 3, but in 3rd place. His new teammate Gabriel Bortoleto finished just 2 points ahead for the runner-up spot, but both were completely destroyed by the champion Kimi Antonelli. The Italian driver was just in a complete league of his own this season, with a 101 point gap over Bortoleto, with 9 race wins across the season, compared to both Jaguar drivers who won 2 races each. George Russell in the other Mercedes car took just 1 race win, with both Zayn Maloney and Isaac Hadjar also taking a race win each. There will be 3 drivers unfortunately missing out on the final season, with Alex Albon, Pepe Marti and Arvid Lindblad all being dropped from their teams, with Sergio Perez being brought in by Aston Martin and Nicolas Olof returning for the Racing Bulls. Race winner Maloney moves over to Williams, with the reigning champion Kimi Antonelli joining Ferrari. Oliver Behrman then returns to the title contenders of Mercedes, with Paul Aron joining Red Bull and Callum Voisin signing for Audi to make his return after being dropped by Jaguar all the way back at the end of Season 1. The final set of regulation changes will then hit both the powertrain and durability departments. Now I thought the title fight was going to be very close, however Mercedes just completely fell off, dropping to P4, meaning that Jaguar had practically no competition, allowing them to win the final Constructors' Championship of the simulation. Neither Mercedes driver finished inside the top 3, with the former champion Kimi Antonelli dropping down to 3rd place after being overtaken by both Jaguar drivers. That means that for just the second time in this simulation, a Jaguar driver is the driver's champion, but it wasn't Lando Norris, who could only manage to achieve the runner-up spot. This means that we saw another brand new world champion, this time in the form of Gabriel Bortoleto, who wins his first driver's championship, and I think it's the first time in any simulation I've done on F125. The Brazilian driver did have a strong season as he took 5 race wins across the year, compared to Lando Norris, who only took 2. Kimi Antonelli managed another 3 race wins after moving to Ferrari, with both Russell and Oscar Piastri winning twice. Sergio Perez was able to win his final race, just like Charles Leclerc, who rounded out the simulation with just 1 race win. But that reaches the end of Jaguar's 10 seasons in Formula 1, so let's combine the entire decade and find out who our strongest performers were. First of all, let's have a look at the Constructors' Championship, where 4 different teams won a title and McLaren wasn't one. The first Constructors' title went to Red Bull, with Ferrari going on to win 3 on the bounce. The rest of the titles were then won by Mercedes and Jaguar, with the Silver Arrows only winning twice, while the newest team came in to win 4 Constructors' Championships in just 10 years. 6 different drivers were able to win a Drivers' Championship, with Bortoleto and Carlos Sainz both winning their first and only title with the new Jaguar team. Lando Norris and Max Verstappen were also able to win 1 title each, while both Charles Leclerc and Kimi Antonelli had very strong careers to win the title on 3 occasions each. A whopping 18 different drivers were able to win a Formula 1 Grand Prix, with Liam Lawson, Lewis Hamilton and Esteban Ocon all winning just once. Gasly managed 2, Behrman and Hadjar managed 3, while both Zayn Maloney and Valtteri Bottas managed to win 4. Hülkenberg and Carlos Sainz both took 5 race wins, but they finished just behind Perez, who managed to take 6, and Bortoleto, who won 7 races in the final 2 seasons. Oscar Piastri only had 1 appearance in the top 3 despite winning 9 races, with Max Verstappen winning 10 alongside his title. George Russell was just ahead after he took 14, before we jump up to Lando Norris on 21, Kimi Antonelli on 25, before another big jump up to Charles Leclerc, who topped the standings after taking 39 race wins. And that's going to wrap up another video on F125. Now make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already. There'll be links in the description to the Jaguar mod that I've used, as well as my various social media platforms. I've fairly recently created a Patreon, which is where I'll be uploading any mods that I create, or another way to support the channel even further. There'll also be the link to my Discord server in the description, which is the best way to receive updates about videos, and also to talk to me and other viewers of the channel. But that is going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.